I'm back, and today I'm going to talk about deep sigh, the trans thing. Um, Not something that I've been particularly looking forward to talking about. In fact, for many years, because I've been hearing about the whole trans thing for Jesus, last 7, 8 years now, in the media and whatnot. And for a while, I literally ignored it. I was like, this is all just we're making a too big of a deal out of this. Like, this isn't even a big issue. We're giving it too much attention. Like, there's hardly even any trans people out there. So I just found that the amount of attention and media coverage the point was getting it was very disproportional to how big the actual issue is, when there's so many other um, serious issues in the world, right? There's starvation, poverty, war. There's so many other things that you could argue are so much more important. And so I just ignored it for years. I'm like, this doesn't matter. This is just a nothing burger. Um, and then it continued to just get to be like a bigger and bigger thing. And to my surprise, it didn't blow over. Um, it did eventually get to the point where there's even now a trans person in my life who's had a direct negative effect into my life. So it's made its way into my life. But the first thing I want to say, before I get into it, is my dad was trans. I mean, he had his surgeries, he had everything done, full trans, back in the 1990s, in like, I think, 1999, I believe, late 1998, 99. So, guys, if there's a good person to speak on this particular subject, like, it's me. Um, I lived with my dad. I was intimate with him. Um, I loved him dearly. I remember when he first changed, he was terrified that I would, reject him and cut him off. But of course, he was my father, and I knew he was a good man, and I loved him unconditionally. And I didn't really, I didn't think too much of it, because I mean, really, what child is interested in their parents' sexuality, right? But I mean, yeah, I know the point intimately. I was learning about gender dysphoria and all that kind of stuff in the 90s. I met lots of other trans people and friends through my dad. Um, my dad meant so much to me. I loved him dearly. He really meant like the world to me. Um, he was my rock, my foundation in many ways, and I owe so much to him. He was an incredible man. Um, but the basic fact about him was that he had a mental illness. And really, it's no different to, for instance, a young woman who feels insecure, who maybe feels like she should be uh, more attractive than she is, or that she should look differently than the way she does because of the way she would like to look, or envisions herself or thinks of herself in her own mind. That's a kind of body dysphoria, um, and there's all kinds of. I mean, I don't want to generalize. There's all kinds of things that can play into that, and wanting, and But the point is trying to correct those points that originate mentally, with actual physical surgeries is just not any kind of solution or way of dealing with that. And that's what that's what my father eventually found out. Through a lot of the traumas in his life, he came to genuinely believe that life as a woman would be easier and better. And sure enough, he found out that it wasn't necessarily any better, and that becoming trans and all that was no solution to any of his problems, and that essentially he had been living a lie. Which at some point later on in my adult life, I told him that directly. I said, you're living a lie, because it did become obvious to me. And he eventually, he pretty much gave the point up. He didn't go back to becoming a man, because, those surgeries are a lot, man. They're really intense. That's something no one ever really gives enough credit to. Those surgeries are horrible. Like he described as just the worst kind of pain any human being could ever imagine. So he didn't end up going back to being a man, but by the end of his life, he didn't care. He didn't care about his gender identity, because he realized that wasn't the point. That wasn't a way to really fix anything in life. It wasn't the answer. So by the end of his life, he gave the point up. It didn't matter anymore. And there's so many people now I see going down this road that it's like I would love to warn them. I would love to tell them my story about my dad. Especially, Jesus Christ, guys, the fact that we're doing this to like young people, like you hear about kids having these irreversible surgeries. By the way, that's another key point. My father died young. To me, he died young. He died like maybe about a week after he turned 60, which is well below life expectancy in Canada, which, by the way, I recently heard is going down. Anyway, side note. But yeah, he died young, and as a result of those surgeries, and they wreaked hell and havoc on his body. Not to mention the hormones that he was taking and everything, like really screwed him up mentally. And it was just a diversion, a distraction, a wild goose chase that took him further and further away from actually getting to the core of his actual issues, which, like I said, are mental in nature. And that's the bigger point with the trans thing. And this, going back to what I was saying about, I'm sure, like, I've seen people argue, like, why would people care about the trans thing? There's issues like poverty, for instance, that are so much bigger, so much more important and widespread. I saw one person on social media say, if you care about the trans thing more than this other issue, then you don't know, what has meaning and value, and you're distracted, whatever. But it's like those points don't have to be in competition. You can care about both of them, first of all. And the bigger point too is it's not just about actually being trans or not. It's about mental illness and reality and being able to, it's about the truth, guys. Like I say, I told my dad directly, like, you're living a lie, and he knew it, and he eventually gave up that lie. And that's the bigger point, is that truth matters. Mental illness matters. And the bigger point around this whole trans thing is we've created this culture where we deliberately want to be ignorant to and turn a blind eye to mental illness. Not only be ignorant about it and turn a blind eye to it, we're literally trying to celebrate it and encourage it and be proud of it. We're trying to turn something that should be recognized as a problem that requires care and attention and support and correction, we're regarding that as a good thing. So basically, it's so evil, guys. It's backwards. That's why the word evil is the word live backwards. We're trying to make a positive thing out of something that is negative. And it's like I have to be transparent about the whole story with my dad, because guys, it's so brutal and cringe when I've had people dare to attack me that I'm transphobic or a bigot or whatever. It's like, guys, you have no fucking idea how much I love my dad, and that everything I'm saying here is purely out of like love and concern, and a love for what is right and true. And one could even argue that this point, which is the point of mental illness, is maybe the biggest issue, one of the biggest issues in this world to tackle, because what social issue does not stem from a point of mental illness? People who do evil, horrible, depraved acts do so out of mental illness, because they're mind controlled, because they live in their minds and their imagination, which creates the feelings and the emotions they experience, and they start to believe that that's really who they are. And then they commit acts of evil. War, rape, deliberately controlling and deceiving and cheating human beings and lying to them. And anyway, I'm not even gonna get into all the examples. The point is guys, that mental illness is a big problem in this world, and this is not to compare or put myself above anyone else, or put anyone above anyone else, to say that trans people are necessarily any worse or whatever, but it obviously is an extreme thing, right? You could call it degrees of mental illness, but that's the point, is I'm not trying to like compare or act as if I'm better, again, it's brutal when people try to attack you as though you're taking some kind of side or playing some superiority game. It's like, that's all people seem to want to do, is have these petty games over who's better than one another. It's like, that's not how I see it at all. Virtually every single human being on the fucking planet has some form of mental illness, and we should all recognize that. We should all care about truth. We should all care about what we get right and what we get wrong, and create a culture where it is important to recognize those things, where we value truth, and we welcome being challenged and being corrected, because we see it as an act of love, because we are a people and a culture that love truth and love reality, because reality, it's all you've got, guys. You can't live in a fantasy. You can't make a reality better with a fantasy. You have to work with what you've got. You have to work with the reality you have and make the absolute best you can out of it. And living in your imagination, trying to be something that you're not, and daring to be proud of that is not the way. And I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg, guys. I mean, there's a lot of other really nasty, evil stuff that I'm not even going to get into in this video, that is ushered in and hidden through the whole trans thing. People use that stuff to anyways, I'm not even gonna go there. Maybe one day in another video I will. But yeah, like I said at the start of the video, this is not something I am excited to open up, but it's like I have to. I feel a sense of responsibility to do so. And this is also for my dad in a way too. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got to say for now. Thanks, guys.